Greetings and welcome to the Media Beat. It is episode 75. We have made the three-quarter century, like quite a lot of Indian batsmen, sadly, in the first test, which gives you a clue as to when we're recording this. Both Maureen and Claire, not in the slightest bit interested in the cricket, but they are interested in the world of media. And today, or not quite today, but very close today, so summer, 50 years ago, something extraordinary happened that everybody listening to this will know about. I'm absolutely convinced. And let me just give you a little clue. Oh, get off the beach. That's right. The Shining. No, it is not. It was the 50th anniversary of Jaws. That incredible film that we all remember. I remember going to see it. I wasn't 9, but I definitely went to see it. I was absolutely terrified. I think I was a bit young to be seeing it, but it was an amazing cultural phenomenon. Almost one of those, I know where I was when I first found out about Jaws, or I know where I was when that head popped out, which was the worst bit. But anyway, what it has done, it's inspired the Media Beat to have a look at the history of the summer blockbuster, which is something now that we've come to take for granted because wasn't always a thing. Or was it? Well, I now invite Claire to just take us through a little bit about the summer blockbusters and maybe give us a few facts that we didn't realise. So, Claire, over to you.
Thank you very much, Oliver. And first of all, thank you for singing that theme tune so badly that I'm pretty sure nobody's going to sue us for IP infringement, because that was our biggest concern, but I think we're fine. So anyways,
deliberately awful.
No, I could not have done better. So yes, it's our 75th episode, and on the 20th of June 1975, look at that, isn't that on topic? Jaws premiered across the US, plunging the country into what some people call masochistic terror. Interestingly, Jaws is called Les Dents de la Mer in French, which has got nothing to do. It's a completely different title, but
Is
it doesn't matter.
Sea teeth?
Yes.
Sea teeth.
Sea teeth, les dents de la mer. Well, Anyways, so everybody knows about Jaws, but if you haven't seen it, it's a 9-meter great white shark which terrorizes a Massachusetts resort town and sparks collective panic. The movie itself, a few facts. Steven Spielberg made it. Obviously, he was only 27, so please all feel incredibly old. It was a very complicated shoot. He had this massive mechanical shark which completely malfunctioned, so he couldn't actually show it. Thankfully, John Williams came up with that incredible score that you've heard perfectly hummed by our wonderful producer Oliver earlier on. And so actually the problem with the shark became the most iconic thing about the movie. So it was really about creative solutions. No budgets and creative solutions always make for great movies. Now, this is interesting, obviously, and if you want to know more about the creative challenges around Jaws, please research them, but that's not what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about Lew Wasserman, who was the chairman of Universal and who, in the summer of 75, decided to make a crazy bet, and at the time it was an absolutely insane bet, to release Jaws at the very start of summer, which normally you would never ever do. It was an absolutely known fact that you wouldn't release a movie in summer, it would always tank. And there's a quote from Lew Wasserman who says, "I want this picture to run all summer long. I don't want people in Palm Springs to see the picture in Palm Springs. I want them to have to get in their car and drive to see it in Hollywood." So they invested in a massive, and again, this was completely new and not really done before, TV marketing campaign. And the slogan was the movie to see before you go swimming. Ta-da. It opened in 400 theaters simultaneously in the US, which is completely against the tradition at the time of a slow city by city rollout, seeing how it's doing to decide where to put it next, etc. And within a month, it had expanded to 700 theaters. It worked. Jaws became the first film to cross the $100 million box office receipts milestone. Eventually got to $470 million worldwide. This is on a $12 million budget, so, did quite well for the studio. It was a huge surprise because it did, as I say, it was a small movie-ish, no A-list star. Spielberg at the time was certainly not an established director, but because it worked so well, this strategy, the wide release, the summer timing, and saturation marketing, that became the formula. That became the blockbuster formula that has been running ever since for the last 50 years. The other thing that it did was it targeted actively the 15 to 35 age group. And again, this was very new because the traditional age group that movies would target were older. But what happened, because they went for this younger audience, young audiences returned to see the film multiple times. There was one young guy in New York who said that he saw it 9 times that summer. I mean, remember, there wasn't cable at the time, but still. And the other thing that happened was in the cinema, it became really noisy. People were screaming along with the movie. They were talking. They were really bonding in a way, in an experience that really wasn't the way that movies were consumed at the same time, at that time. And finally, what it also pioneered was movie merchandising, t-shirts, beach towels, toys, and sort of really set the stage for franchise building. There were sequels and spin-offs, none of them involving our friend Steven, but still doing very well. So it's interesting to compare where we are now. The biggest movie ever was, in terms of in terms of release generally, was also summer release. It was in 2019, and it was Avengers Endgame, and it grossed $2.8 billion globally. And this, moved this and the previous ones, they moved that concept of simultaneous release to a much bigger scale, because now what people do is this day and date release, which means that it opens everywhere in the world on the same day. Now, in the US, they opened Joe's everywhere on the same day, but then the rollout internationally was over weeks and months. This is not what we do anymore. And now Endgame was the one big thing. It had complete globalized media coverage, and it now is an example of how the summer has become the most lucrative period for Hollywood. So that's where you do tentpole releases. That's where you do Jurassic World. That's where you do Superman. Those are two that are coming next month. Now, of course, streaming is disrupting this model, but I think what we're seeing is, for those tentpole blockbuster movies, there is still an audience. There is still a thrill of this packed cinema in your beach resort where you go after a day at the beach, etc. So there's still a little bit of criticism around Joe's. Did this whole blockbuster era completely kill Hollywood creativity? I don't think that's true, but it is a question. I feel like it probably did redraw the landscape of cinema in the last 50 years, and it changed the dynamic towards one where you have a few massive blockbusters and a long tail of slightly more targeted movies. What we can say is that for a small movie that came out in the summer of 1975, Joe's is still very alive, and is still as powerful when you watch it today as it was back then, despite the lack of CGI and VFX and AI and all sorts of acronyms. So happy anniversary to Jaws. That was my story, and I'm handing over to Maureen now.
That was wonderful. Wow. There's some of that I didn't really know about. So that was really interesting, particularly the universal angle. But I think what it does do, just to add a couple of points, there's not much to add to that. Gosh, that was a wonderful deep dive. Is it was definitely just playing on this sort of masterclass in suspense. So this really film did create less is more approach. And because of something which they didn't predict, which was the mechanical breakdown or an unreliable Jaws, which was called Bruce, by the way, Spielberg had to lean into another famous director's approach, which was just quite Hitchcockian. So I think the film was probably saved by John Williams' fantastic score, which gave that sort of ominous two-tone. And you don't really get to see the shark. So you get to see the fear on the swimmers and the people around it more so than the shark itself. So less is more approach came out of this filmmaking. So I thought Spielberg did a super job there. But of course, John Williams' score was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So you can really see that the storytelling can sculpture also culture. So sadly, though, the counterpoint to how wonderful this film was and well received was people start to then hunt down sharks. And apparently, shark hunting contributed to a global shark declines of up to 71% since the
My
1970s.
goodness.
And Spielberg and the author of Jaws, Peter Benchley, later grew to regret the film. But then they became advocates for marine protection. So the counter to this was that they spent 50 years helping with marine protection. So that's a nice thing that, yes, storytelling really does sculpt culture there. So for better or worse, the creatives did a fantastic job. John Williams really did save that film. Bruce, you didn't do a good job, but overall there was fantastic influence. So I loved it. I can't add anything more to your analysis of that and a deep dive other than those two points. But yeah, fantastic.
Wow. A story there with a very long tail, pun intended. Absolutely fantastic.
Excellent one. I like that.
Yeah, that's great. And of
I
course,
like that.
we all know what the most deadly animal on Earth is in terms of human deaths. Do we? And not
Do
much
we?
hunting of this animal. No, have a guess.
Is it a spider?
Bee?
It's of that order of magnitude, but even smaller. A bee? No,
I don't know.
lovely bees.
I don't like
It
bees.
is the humble and yet deadly mosquito, in fact.
Oh, well, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
And there
There
should
we
be
go.
more. There should be more mosquito hunting, in my view, in that regard. Gosh, that's terrible. The poor sharks. That was great. I just remember Robert Shaw sliding into the mouth of that shark, and oh dear, and he died 3 years later. The great Robert Shaw. What a shame. That was a great deep dive, and again, pun intended, a deep dive on Jaws. So great, and yes, the summer blockbuster, a cultural phenomenon forever? Question mark. All right, so the next thing, of course, on the agenda is in the news. And it's business, big business. So we go to Maureen Kerr, who is standing at Netflix Towers, who is about to drop the story of the TF1 Netflix deal. Maureen?
Yeah, what's going on here? So, an unexpected pairing of Netflix and TF1. And as we know, TF1 is France's biggest commercial broadcaster. What's happening here? It's bringing its linear TV channels, live sports, and a whopping 30,000 hours of on-demand catalogue right into the Netflix app. This is not about content licensing, so don't say, "Oh yeah, well it's one of those." It's not. This is something more.
I
This
was
is
going to say
something
that.
more.
Very
Yeah,
good.
so just in case, all those folks out there saying, "Yeah, this is the same as before."
Maureen's a step ahead
No,
of
it's
you,
not.
as ever.
No, it's not. This is TV1 broadcasting live from inside Netflix walls, right? So it does raise one big, very, very big question, which I'm sure Claire would ask. Is Netflix quietly evolving into the next generation aggregator? Well, we have seen signals of it doing that, and it clearly has dipped its toes into live events, sports, comedy specials, and whatnot. And of course, as we all know, Netflix has got its own ad-supported tier. But this is something different, and this is something that Claire and I have been discussing for, I don't know, a year or two. I think this looks like a little bit like new bundles. So you'll have live, you'll have local, you'll have habitual content all layered over on top of its on-demand global hits. So why do you think they chose TF1 to do this? Well, the French market is quite unique, as Claire will always tell us. It's highly regulated.
Always different.
It's always different, all right? It's always open to experimentation. So highly regulated, strong national players like, of course, TF1, who are required to invest in local content. And audiences there are still jumping and oscillating between the hybrid space of, linear and streaming. So what makes this a fantastic deal, in my view, for Netflix is it's testing this new model. And this new model really is about trying to ensure that it has that fantastic telly-type content. And I copyrighted that there. I'd said that telly-type content. But what's special and what success may look like for both of these partners is probably threefold. All right, so TF1 gets to see some incremental ad revenue, not just audience migration. Audiences actually used and watched the live channels inside Netflix. And Netflix, here's the punchline, Netflix needs to prove that it can host third-party content without weakening its brand or user experience. So I think this is phenomenal. I think this is a really interesting deal. It is exclusive, and TF1 specifically will control its own destiny to some extent, because I think it's going to be the controlling its ad sales. So that makes it pretty important, I think, for TF1. So all in all, this could turn out a great litmus test for Netflix, testing to see whether or not it becomes not only the biggest streaming service that it kind of exists, and to YouTube over there that it's trying to compete with, but it might just become the world's default television place for watching everything and anything at any time. I rest my case. Hey, back to you in the studios, Oliver. And sorry, Claire.
Yes, I had things to say. I mean, well, not much, because he did such a great summary of it. TF1 will definitely be selling the ad inventory, and that will have been a huge selling point for them, because it increases their ad inventory generally significantly, but mostly it makes it much younger. Because if Netflix audience is much younger than the TF1 audience, all of the linear audience is aging anyway, and TF1 is very skews older than some of the other linear channels. So for them, it's absolutely crucial to allow their advertisers, that they have fantastic advertiser relationships, to target audience who are currently not necessarily on the TF1 either, the TF1 channel and the TF1 platform. TF1 is also obviously future proofing. They have, it's a bold move, and they're saying, do you know what, we know this is happening, we can't put it back in the box, we're going to go with it. And I think that's a very interesting strategy, in terms of accepting the fact that the walled garden strategy that most linear channels have been pursuing since the iPlayer, which we covered, back then, is possibly not the right one, and that there are other ways to look at things. And the fact that they will be the first one, where I'm sure they did a really good deal with Netflix, because they were the first one, and so they established a first mover advantage here that will hopefully serve them well. And I think for Netflix also, they're actually lagging behind the US and the UK and France. They only have about 48% of connected home. That's 60% in the UK and the US, and it's not really growing anymore. So this, there are other bundlers in France. There is more competition. There's Canal Plus, there's OCS. There are some very strong local streaming players. So for Netflix, it really consolidates their position in France in a way that they will find very useful, I think. And also it allows them to test this quietly. And if it doesn't work in France, it's not quite the same as failing in the US or even in another English speaking market. So it's it makes a lot of sense. I think it's a very interesting deal. We'll have to watch and see.
Watch and see. Watch and see. We know what that means. Run and run. Thank you very much, Maureen. Thank you very much, Claire. Very interesting. Can't stay away from Netflix. You can't look away, can you, from that beast? Staying with you, Claire. So the WBD, I assume that's Warner Brothers Discovery, breakup. Rumor, speculation, or
No,
happening?
it's happening.
It's happening.
It's definitely happening. They have announced in June 2025, so this month, and this is our good friend David Zaslav. Remember, we haven't talked about him in a while, actually, David Zaslav, but
Friend of the
he's
show,
still
yeah.
there. He is still running WBD, the Warner Bros. Discovery, but he has just announced that the plan to split the company into two separate publicly traded companies by mid-2026. So it's going to separate, this is something that we've heard from other players as well, separating the streaming and studio assets on the one hand from the traditional cable televisions on the other hand. Now, people might say that they're basically going back to where they were before they merged the two entities. Now, it's not quite true, because the split isn't exactly replicating the previous split, but there is certainly a question in terms of undoing what took so long and so much effort to do. That being said, the market reaction was extremely positive, which I think is, this is this is what we're hearing here. It's not Zaslav reverting course. It's Zaslav listening to his shareholders, and the shareholders want that. They don't want these two, the legacy cable channels and the streamers, in the same place. They don't know how to value these global big mergers. They're asking for simplicity. They're asking for clarity. This is why Comcast did it, and this is why the WBD decided to do it. So David Zaslav is given himself a job. He will be running the sexy side of the new two companies, the streaming and studios, which will include Warner Brother TV, films, DC, HBO, and Max, which I think are now the same thing anyway. And then there's a new company called Global Networks, which will be run by a guy called Gunnar Wiedenfels. Obviously, another black woman, as you can tell from the name. And those key assets, those people, that group will include CNN, TNT, TBS, Discovery Plus, and the famous Bleacher Report. So this is cable news and sports. So yes, I don't know what you thought about it, Maureen. I thought I think they just didn't really have a choice. They couldn't quite keep going with the structure that they had, and they had to create some shareholder value, and it will be much cleaner that way and easier to manage. But tell me what you think.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think you used the word sort of there's more strategic clarity. I think it makes it simplified the structure. Of course, the cash flow and the cash comes from the old sort of networks TV still, and I think clearing the way for the streaming side funding itself and really needing to compete, though, with a really strong competitive set is going to be challenging going forward. But of course, Gunnar will have to just manage the decline of this cash cow. The cash cow, though, will be paying that extraordinary amount of debt, which is something like 38 billion in debt.
But,
yeah, you forgot about the debt there. There was a lot of money there.
Yeah,
and that debt,
the old guys.
That debt goes with Gunnar. For Global Networks, but guess what? I mean, the ad revenues should clearly be able to service that to some extent, and that business is going to be tough. And Gunnar has a reputation. He's a CFO. He's currently the CFO. He has a reputation of good cost cutting. So something that we might want to talk about maybe later in the year is what happens to CNN. And CNN clearly is this fantastic brand, but a very expensive brand in terms of those anchors that we see that get 8-figure salaries. Now Gunnar is not going to allow that, so let's just see what happens there. But yeah, all the debt goes with Gunnar. Then there's a big loan given to Zaslav that he's going to need to have to finance, and so he's got 2 years, I reckon, 1 to 2 years to really prove he can compete in the streaming and studio side with Netflix, Disney, and Amazon. He's a big one. Yeah. So Zaslav came from more low cost Discovery side. He's never worked in this sexy side. He's never worked in film and TV and streaming, really. So it's going to be a real test of fortitude whether or not he can do it. It could well be his swan song. Who knows? But we're going to make sure that we talk about him a lot going forward, given that we gave him a stay of execution for the last year and a half, 2 years. But yeah, I mean, if it pans out, brilliant. But I don't think it's going to be easy for Zaslav. I think Gunnar is going to do, sadly, a bit of a cost-cutting job, but nonetheless, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Zaslav really does compete against the streamers. So yeah, interesting one, really interesting.
The Media Beat has its eyes, all 4 of them, on that one. Gosh, how interesting. So we have sent one of our most experienced reporters over to Cannes this season, as we usually do. So we always like to have a bit of representation in Cannes, and this time it was the turn of Maureen Kerr, actually, who we sent round there, and she taped together a report of what she had been seeing, what had she been up to, what had she been drinking, what had she been eating, who had she been bumping into at Cannes, and this was the report she filed. Maureen.
It seems weird, actually, because we should have just sent Claire. It would have been easier as she speaks French, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't. All I know is yes. Oui, rosé. Oui, encore rosé. So yes.
Probably like rosé.
How many French people were there at Cannes Lions,
There were
Maureen?
not
Let's
many
be
because
honest. Yeah,
there were not many because I think they decamped to
yeah.
nearby Antibes or other places, because they do not want to be there in a very, very busy Cannes. Indeed, it was Cannes Lions. So, Cannes Lions traditionally is the conference for advertisers, but of course, with all these festivals now, these markets, you cannot walk past the Palais without seeing Google, YouTube, Netflix, Disney, and then of course Publicis and Havas and WPP were hidden some way down the Crozet on a beach somewhere. So it was a real interesting mix, actually, if I might say. It was definitely busy. Very, very busy and very, very hot. So we had, of course, these extravagant beachfront activations, but juxtaposed by, if I might say, some economic anxiety and talk of budget cuts. So I took away a couple of things, and I think overall there wasn't one single dominant theme. There were a combination of, a couple here, but the clear sentiment here, in my view, was measured and cautious optimism as we continue into 2025. So what really stood out for me there was the creator economy. Yay! Yeah, line up.
Well, that's a new one.
It's a new one, YouTube. So YouTube put their best people forward, and the air-conditioned Palais. I was so relieved to go inside the Palais to hear and see Neil Moran really pushing hard on the message that creators are the new Hollywood, and
Neil
that
Mahan from YouTube, Justin.
yeah, exactly from YouTube. That he also was saying YouTube is the new telly. And he was also saying that we are encouraging you, of course, YouTube creators to use VO3. So everyone, of course, the YouTube canvas is using all of the AI tools. So making content creation easier and faster and global more than ever. So there was a really big push and lots going on the creator economy. But that was countered by, there were quite a few announcements. As we heard, the TF1 Netflix commercial agreement was dropped in Cannes. So that was really interesting. At the same time, we had both ITV, Channel 4, and Sky launched their ad platform for SMEs, which was extraordinary. So there was a really interesting YouTube new creator economy versus legacy broadcast and streamers. So that was a nice sort of counterbalance. But of course, I would be remiss of saying, AI was everywhere. Okay, but the industry is really treading lightly. AI was omnipresent, but AI was really being positioned as a utility. So every place I ventured, and every let's say that sort of beach hut that I went into with their speeches, it was all about streamlining workflows. It was about automating creative tasks. It was about enhancing productivity. And the favourite of mine was Virgin Voyages, working with Native Foreign, and they created this real interesting cinematic piece to publicise cruises. And they used these characters of mermaids, and it was a brilliant combination. So it was a real cinematic commercial experience. So, and then lastly, I think it was advertising generally just recalibrating. So before, everyone was talking about sort of retail media being the hottest space. It wasn't as hot. There were some talks about it, but no one really had. Everyone had rushed into this sort of retail media, believing that they would get Google-like margins, but realizing it's quite harder than it looks. The overall theme, though, was more execution, not hype. Is our theme for 2025. So consolidation and realism. And then I did take a note at Ian Whitaker's really interesting summary, and he also spoke about more optimism, measured optimism. But I believe measured optimism is still optimism. So I'm very much on the optimistic sort of side. And I had some great conversations with folks. But yeah, it was measured and cautious, and not like Mad Men, advertising rosé flowing everywhere. It had substance, it had character, and yeah, of course, and everyone spoke about AI, but also a backdrop against a very sort of sobering political and military kind of environment that we find ourselves in. So yeah, that were my notes. Back to Claire. Claire, you
Well,
were
I
doing
was
stuff
here in London
things.
where it was also nice weather, I'll
I
have you know.
realise that, yeah.
And but what I always like about when the Lions come up is I like to see the campaigns that win awards, and the one I want to highlight today is the Duolingo one, which I
Oh
think was
yeah.
such a triumph of viral marketing, and actually very much of what you talked about in the creative economy, creator economy. A tiny budget compared to his competitors, all based around this big owl. It started 2025 Duolingo by creating a stunt where Duo, which is the name of the owl, I did not know this. The owl is called Duo. Then Duo was killed. Did you know this? By a Tesla Cybertruck, no less. So they then created this sort of elaborate fake funeral, and that created an enormous amount of user-generated content, and then they started to create this sort of campaigns asking users to revive Duo by using the app, and then creating a number of videos with Duo in different places, etc. And it became huge. I think
Wonderful.
I think 17 billion impressions, something like that, something absolutely insane. And I love it because I just think it shows creativity, in a world of AI and mermaids and everything, and those are obviously great, and we need to continue to test the limits of technology. Sometimes you just put somebody in a big owl costume and see what happens, and I really like that. So go out and watch the death of Duo killed by a Cybertruck as soon as you can. But since we're talking about AI generated video, I discovered something else which you should look up. It's on TikTok, but it's also, I think, you'd probably find on Instagram, and it's an AI generated big orange cat. I think if you look for orange cat, or it's called Hassin, Hsin, orange cat, and it's this AI generated orange cat. It's a terrible cat, because what he does is he goes to the market and he befriends a chicken, and then he takes the chicken home and he washes it and he feeds it, then he became friend, and then he kills it and he eats it, and then he has a funeral for the chicken, and this whole thing is just it's
I love it.
completely I think it's a really nice creative use of AI, in the sense that it's there's a real spark of creativity, but of course it's done all through AI. So anyway, look up the
Oh, it's
orange cat.
creepy. It's
Oh,
really
Have
creepy.
you,
It
have
looks a
you,
bit.
have you
Yeah,
It's quite fat, but that's because of all the chicken he ate.
yeah, fair enough.
And sometimes it's a lamb as well, which makes no sense physically as well, but it doesn't really, I don't think that matters in AI world.
Sort of photorealistic Garfield going on there.
Yeah, he has a whole life. Sometimes he's in a hospital. He's got a friend who's a lion. There's a fox that's always trying to kill him. It's a very involved storyline. You have to go and watch it.
Have you seen that one where biblical stories are played out in AI as if they're streamers and influencers? You've got like, hey folks, how's it going? It's Kane here, and here's my bro Abel. I'll get the URL. It's hilarious. It's biblical stories played out in AI. I think there's one of Moses.
Hi guys.
Yeah, Moses just outside, just about to ask Pharaoh to set my people free. And then it cuts to, we've just been in the meeting with Pharaoh. He said no. Anyway, I'll get the URL. That was great. What a lovely summary. That concludes Maureen's summary of Cannes and in the news. Alors, so moving on to podmojis, and spoiler alert, I think Maureen might have picked up some freebies in Cannes. But we will see more of that later, perhaps, if she can convolutedly put her freebies into a podmoji form. So we're going to start off with Maureen, actually, and there's a thing, apparently, we live a phenomenon here on the Media Beat, and there is a new phenomenon, and it is what used to be called libraries, I thought, but anyway, there's a thing called, or indeed, what you had to do when you had been bad at my horrible prep school. We had to, what was it called? It was called, library time or something. Which anyway, this is silent reading spaces. So what's all that about? Podmojize at your will, Maureen.
I love that. I love that. What used to be called libraries. So a couple of weeks ago, London quietly welcomed a resurgence in Reading Rhythms, which is a pop-up silent reading gatherings. And the idea, it brings some sort of calm and connection back to public life. So you take your book and you go to a place, and this happened to be a second home in Spitalfields around, I think it was, actually, to be honest, I think it was around March time, and hundreds of people attend just to like a reading party. So you come along and you open up your book and you sort of, just read in silence. And if you like, there are moments where you pause and you can have a conversation about the book you're reading, but you don't have to. There's no obligation, and you can have coffees and whatnot. There was a few days later, actually. I think it was April, May. Two others did pop up: London's Girls Book Club and the Sober Girls Society. They hosted a sort of summer sober silent reading party in Balham,
God, it gets
Balham's
worse.
Garden Room. I know. So over non-alcoholic
Oh, God.
cocktails. So I mean, why is this important? So it's shared stillness, it's public pause, as radical act. It's a community through stories. So some lovely things. There's good intentions. So, but my podmoji is
Is that a P or a D or a?
P.
It's a P. You
Oh,
have
it's
to
a
turn
P.
it around.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
It's on video. It's the other way around. A P. What?
P for,
Yeah.
P for pause, or
Oh, right. Or, please avoid at all
Okay,
costs.
please
not
avoid
from
it over.
swag.
This,
That's not my swag from Cannes. That's
Right.
not.
It's a nice,
this is very cute.
I work.
Listen,
very nice P,
I,
Maureen.
this reminds me of a story of a guy who was like, you know what? Now, sometimes when you get out of the airport in some American cities, you can just take an Uber without booking it first. And somebody else said, yeah, that's a taxi.
Yeah, that's right.
I do feel a little bit like that with that story. I mean, I love it because
Yeah.
we need to read more. I love that people are finding new, interesting, maybe not new, but certainly new to them, interesting ways of getting this quiet time, of spending less time with their phone, of, finding the right space for them to read. I don't really mind where it is. I think it's lovely. I think it also talks to the loneliness that's still prevalent in a lot of big cities. And I think creating those shared spaces is very important. It's also true that libraries, as they used to be known, have had zero funding for many, many years. So they're not the nicest places always, although people who work there are doing as much as they can, and they're all lovely. So great. I love it. Who doesn't like a story about reading more books? So yay. Yay, libraries.
Yeah, and a slight fist pump, a fairly enthusiastic fist pump from Claire there. I've got an idea. You could have a place, and you go in there and you can sort of sit around in groups or singly, and they could serve. I think they could serve drinks and snacks, light snacks maybe, or even, I don't know, sandwiches. Anyway, no, maybe not. It'll never catch on.
No, it will never catch on. I don't think this can work.
No,
We're making fun, but
the
actually,
idea,
it's a
al
really nice
fresco.
idea.
The point being public and al
We're
fresco.
being facetious.
Yeah.
It's a lovely idea.
I am being facetious. I do apologise. I mean, my lovely wife Louise goes to a book club, and it's the only way she finds out who's getting divorced and whose house sale has fallen through.
But I bet these aren't sober occasions. I don't know.
Absolutely not. She returns normally in a total state of, do you know whose house sale has fallen through, and do you know who's getting divorced? What was the book you're reading? The what? Sorry.
My best group of friends. We have something that's called the No Book Club, and we get together every month.
Now that is a good idea.
Not even pretending anymore.
And Oliver, does your wife's friends listen to this podcast?
I do hope not. Not this episode.
I'd be pleased to know. Yes, yeah.
We'll know soon enough.
She shares the gossip. She says there's no Chatham House rules there. Obviously, no.
Yeah. We're literally in Chatham as well.
Chatham, yes,
as you know.
Exactly.
So maybe I'll have to redact this episode, and you'll love this one, Louise. Maybe you can discuss it at book club. So that was good. Yes, good old silent reading spaces, aka a park. Now moving on, let's stay with you, Claire. Actually, Trump extending the TikTok deadline. Oh, yawn yet again.
Oh no, seriously? Look at me. This is my surprised face. It is not surprised. So, this is the third time Trump postponed the enforcement of the law that would ban TikTok in the United States. Obviously, he needs more time to come up with a deal. Now, the new cutoff date is September 17th, as the Americans would say, 17th of September, as we say here, for ByteDance to sell the US assets. All it means is they haven't found a way to get it out. We know they're not going to go dark because it's. We've talked about the impact, the economic impact. Trump can't afford that, but there is a legal question as to whether he's even allowed to continue to extend like that, and we'll see. I suspect it'll just keep going. I think nobody wants to tackle it. There are other priorities right now, but yes, TikTok ban has been extended. I don't know. I don't even know what to do as a
Oh dear,
podmoji. Just
at a loss. Oh, no, there we go.
okay,
There we go. No, that's
we have to
perfect.
we have to cover it because it is a thing. But I don't even I don't know. What do you think, Maureen?
How about a good
Well,
old-fashioned French?
yes.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Pah,
Lovely. Thank you. Sorry,
pah.
Maureen.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. It was interesting to watch these expressions and gestures. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
There's nothing more to add to what Claire said, apart from I think his own sort of the senior Republicans like Josh Hawley and some Grassley person as well. They're growing impatient. There's also the repeated extensions that sort of are definitely in the category of legally dubious because it's a third
One of
time.
many things that's in the category of
Well,
legally
well,
dubious.
exactly, and I think everyone's urging for some sort of finality. But who knows what this deal is done? But of course, he can't do too many things in one day. I mean, he's got his golf, he's got his golf, he's got his golf, and then he's got to figure out whether or not he wants to go to war with Iran. So, I mean, why worry about China at this stage? So, yeah. So,
You've got another letter.
There's lots of
Oh,
letters.
golly, there's at least we've got at least 26 podmojis there, unless you've got maybe you've got asterisks there, at signs. Who knows what you've got hidden there? Yes, good. Well skirted around the Media Beat not being a political podcast as well. There, Maureen.
Yeah.
Absolutely no hints of political views there. Lovely. So, looking very much forward to the next letter that you're going to present. We'll come to you actually, Maureen. This alert fatigue, and I'm assuming that this refers to warnings coming up on your phone about things happening, like Third World War starting or England losing another wicket. But there's a alert fatigue. I can absolutely see that being a thing.
There is, and I think what's staggering is some of the statistics. So some folks are receiving like 50 news alerts per day from multiple outlets like Google News or BBC News and others, and everyone's just sick and tired of it and switching off. Now the danger there is, you'll miss out on the fact that someone's just dropped a nuclear bomb, get in your bunker. So it is concerning, and so I thought, how do you handle this? What do you do? So I did look to see if there were other industries that were dealing with this, and I think healthcare in particular, cybersecurity and other IT related areas are doing some smart stuff like filtering, automation, or critical sort of prioritizing alerts and stuff like that. So, but us as users and us as recipients of these thousands and thousands of news alerts need to take action, and there are some apps out there that can help us do that. But it's just overwhelming, and I guess it goes back to that sort of silent sort of reading space. We just need to opt out at some point. But yeah, so mine is mine is a there must be an easier way.
Easier.
Easier way.
Either that or is a statement on drugs that you're giving us there, but it's a bit big.
It's a big E.
A massive E, Maureen's. Just notification discipline. That's the answer, surely.
But it's harder. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
Okay.
who knows? Claire, I don't know what you thought, but
it's a very tricky one because there is alert fatigue. People are switching off. I think 43% is the stat that was given of people actively disabling news alerts because they're feeling overwhelming. But what it means is obviously an issue with disengagement. And in fact, without getting political, there's a clear sign that Democrats in the US are getting massive alert fatigue because the more liberal news publishers tend to cover certain things in more detail than others, and so they are switching off, and so they're not getting informed when something really important happens. The problem is the number of alerts, of course. Typically it's between 8 and 10 a day. Although, for instance, NDTV in India sends 30 a day, which is insane. BBC is about 8.3. The Guardian is about 7. So, it's fine if you only have one news source. If you've got 2, you're already, skirting towards 20. If you've got more than 2, then that becomes completely overwhelming. If you subscribe to some of these news aggregators like Apple News, then it becomes absolutely impossible. It's particularly true of young people who get very, very overwhelmed with news, and that's an issue because they're already disengaging with news generally. So I don't know that there's an easy solution, but it is alert fatigue is definitely, news alert specifically fatigue is definitely a big thing. So I'm going to just have a sad face emoji.
Oh dear. Oh, with the lips. With the protruded lower lip. Oh,
I'm sad. It's a sad thing.
Claire, they can. I mean, the news outlets can cap. They can cap it. They can, ensure that that's.
It's a tricky balance. They can cap it. Sometimes you get the news, the alerts from the BBC, and you're like, "Why is this an alert? This is just an article." But they're also trying to manage they need the traffic. Yeah. So they need to drive people to their app, even when there isn't an immediate breaking news alert. So it's how many news alerts do you send that are breaking news versus the ones that are just trying to help you discover interesting content. So it's not an easy, yes. And I think, certainly most Western news outlets try to find a balance because they're very well aware of it. And the risk, of course, is that people will switch off the alerts or worst case scenario, completely uninstall the app because they just feel that's just too much. And that's the absolute worst outcome for any news publisher. So it's a fine line.
I bet there's a real genuine mental health issue there because we're not designed to be aroused, if you like, on that much regular basis with literally an alert, which is something that takes our attention. And I should imagine most of those sort of micro arousals, if you like, over the end of the day, they come out in some way. I would imagine there's a link between that and anxiety at the very least. Right. Yes, we must take it upon ourselves to disconnect sometimes. Also distracts from what you're doing as well. So you need to get back into what you were doing, and the energy is not zero. Okay, anyway, on that slightly downbeat, yet fascinating episode, 50th anniversary of Jaws. Congratulations, Steven Spielberg, age of 27 when he made that. That's absolutely extraordinary. But he was quite well ahead of what I was doing at 27, I suspect. Probably still.
Most people, I think, probably. Maybe apart from Mozart, I don't know anything.
Yeah, that's right. Mozart and Justin Bieber. That's the only two I can think of who were doing better. So, lovely episode. Brilliant. Absolutely always a pleasure. It only remains for me to say goodbye to Claire. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
And goodbye to Maureen. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Until the next time. Also, goodbye.